You don't want to miss Ham Nation tonight because Gordo's going to tell you about microwave communications, and we're going to visit with the Scott County, Kentucky ARES Club.
Ham Nation is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether they're working in the office or remote. Visit LastPass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This episode of Ham Nation is brought to you by Icom. For more information, visit ICOMAmerica.com/HamNation.
This is Ham Nation, episode 467, August the 19th, 2020. Gordo talks about real high frequency, and we visit with the Scott County Amateur Radio Club. Hello, everybody. It's Bob Heil, K9EID, and we have a very interesting special show tonight. First of all, they're having wildfires around Petaluma, and Victor's up there going, what am I going to do if it all goes down? So we have to be really careful what we're doing here, and we could go off the air, but hang loose because I think we'll be okay to the end. And I am going to be the chat room monitor. Amanda is out speaking at a club, so she's not here. And so we'll be watching after I get through some of our stuff here in the beginning. I'll be in and asking you questions. So be a rare time because usually I'm not in there at that time, but I will be tonight. Gordo, how are you? You're free from the fires, aren't you?
Yep. A lot of fires around Southern California and Northern California, but we're surviving. A lot of heavy smoke in the air. Bob, back to you.
Okay. Well, I know that you have some good things to tell us about, but I got a couple of special things before we bring our special guests in. I want everybody to understand what's going on here. First of all, if you have not seen the new issue of CQ magazine, check out the front cover. Our gal and Jerry, look at that. Valerie and Jerry are on the front cover, and there's a nice article about them, and we're very proud, of course, of their whole situation that went on and got married, and now she's heading up this incredible station that Jerry has built. So that's quite a duo, and we're really proud of them, I mean, to tell you. So if you don't have CQ, you really should get it anyway, don't you think, Gordo?
Yeah, CQ has made an amazing comeback. A couple of years ago, there were just escalating prices in postage, in printing, and they did everything they can. And while they didn't miss an issue, there were some delays, certainly, but they've really made a nice comeback, and they're just working hard. And Rich was just doing a great job at the QSO Radio Expo. He and I were manning the booth along with other great CQ editors, and we had a ball over 2 days.
Well, that's great. We'd have to get them on here and tell us the whole story of it. I'm really impressed with CQ. It's back to what it used to be years and years ago. And a lot of build it and how to do it and all that kind of stuff articles. So they're doing a great job there. And, of course, there's several pages from our friend Gordo. Good job, Gordo. That's
Thanks.
Great. Well, I got a note yesterday from John Amadeo. You remember John? Well, he was the producer for the past, 8 seasons, and he sends me this and a picture of his home station because, of course, they haven't been able to go into the studio. But why he wrote me, listen up, everybody, this is big news. Here's his quote. We will probably start up in the next few weeks and produced 21 new shows on season 9. Very few shows have ever made it that far. In fact, Home Improvement made it to season 8. So Tim gets to beat his own record. So that's great. And that's John's home station. And we all know how about the show. Once in a while, you'll see some ham radio in it with John being one of the producers. So thanks, John, for sending that. We'll look for you soon to come and join us on the show right before you start this season. Well, I have a wonderful spotlight tonight. Let's see. Vic is kind of one-armed in the studio, but maybe he can fire up the old spotlight, and we're going to see what we got behind the curtain tonight. We got a really good club, and I want to bring on Don. And Don and I we've been working on things for a little bit. Don, nice to see you. Greetings.
Oh, greetings. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I really appreciate all the work that you've done to get the slides together. But this is where we start. This is the Scott County ARAS Club, and we'll go through it. What a beautiful looking little street. Is that the main street of the town?
That's correct. It's the main street of Georgetown, Kentucky.
Yeah. Angled parking. I love it. Tell me about this. There's got to be a real story about this.
Yes, this happens to be something called Old Friends Farm. And it's probably the only place in the world that is dedicated to taking care of old race horses. So when the horses are no longer racing, then this organization usually has to purchase the horse, but they bring them here and they could live out their days just walking around and munching the grass.
That's great. Now this is in Georgetown, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you guys, you have a great club. So let's see. Bring Mike's picture on. Tell me a little bit about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This picture is Mike Kennigan. It's KI4OQL, who happens to be our club vice president. And about a year or so ago, he was made director of the emergency management for the county-city combination. We've moved most of the radios to a more open area in the emergency management center. And as you can see, right-hand side, we've got the UHF radio that's mounted in a panel, and it is more of you could say, a professional arrangement because we can keep all the cables and everything else hidden away.
Yeah, I see you have some D-Star. That's great. So on your repeater, that's wonderful. Tower, wow.
Our antenna is about 65 feet up that tower. That's about a 300-foot tower, and 85 feet. And the reason it's not any higher is because it allows us to get to the antenna with a bucket truck. So we don't have to hire a climber to go up and do antenna work.
That's cool.
A picture of a group of our members assembling our vertical for a field day.
Gotta have field day, yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is a picture of a VE testing, a VE testing arrangement. We have access to the kind of community room at the local police station, so it permits us to provide the level of separation. our VE coordinator just recently participated in an online test, and he said that worked very well.
Right.
A picture of some of our members, and this happened to be a meeting that was, we had a guest speaker from the Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio club up near Cincinnati, and came down and gave us a very good presentation, along with a lot of hand items that we could examine on the fox hunting.
Yeah, it's a big deal, of course, to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another picture of our lecture. That happens to be the Emergency Operations Center's main area.
Always have to have a place where you can do those things. Field day.
Yeah. And another group of the members at a recent field day. Unfortunately, our field day this year was canceled, but we still had a couple of members that operated independently, and we'll make points, but we'll see where we fall.
Yeah, absolutely.
After all, the idea there is to get out there, communicate, have fun, and if you score points, so much the better.
Nice looking area that you can have field day in. That's great. Yeah. And of course, every club has to go out and eat, right?
Yeah. So every December, instead of a meeting, we hold a luncheon, get all together, and members bring their spouses, and we have lunch and have a good time.
That's great. That's great. Well, it looks like you guys have it together very well. And anything else that we can talk about? You can tell us about the club. What do you have coming up? I know it's crazy doing all these times. Are you doing Zoom meetings or anything like that, Don?
No, well, as a matter of fact, we have scheduled some training activities that we have after the meeting. They are called educational sessions, and those continue now even through the restricted times. So we assigned one member as a meeting coordinator, sets up the Zoom, and we've had over a dozen attendees at a recent Zoom meeting. So what we typically will do, we'll have a topic. We've gotten members to talk about my first radio by a new ham, how I got into digital by another new ham, importance of standing wave ratios, amplifiers, including Class F. And if you remember when you went to school, there was no such thing as a Class F, and today they're very common. Yeah. And as I indicated earlier, we've had guest instructors in from other clubs and covering fox hunting and antennas.
Well, the best thing that we can do is to bring the not just young in age, but the newly licensed in and teach them some things.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the one of the newer hams, probably licensed about a year, is in the process of rejuvenating our website. He looked at it and said, it's kind of dated. We need to do something. So he put together a draft of a site for us, and we're presently kind of massaging that, and eventually we'll use it to replace the website that you see.
Don, as an ARES organization, have you adopted the Anderson connectors, and do you hold training on whether you solder them or swedge them for a proper Anderson connection?
That's interesting because you mentioned that, because about a year ago we said, we really need to standardize on this stuff. If we get to a point where we have to grab a radio somewhere and take it off-site, then we need to have a standardized system. And we've adopted the Anderson power poles as a crimped connector and use that universally through the complete radio package.
Terrific.
Well, we have to look at being able to be active at any time, and a lot of times different clubs show up at the same procedure, and so it's really neat to have everything together and organized so that you don't have to ask questions. You just put it together, and that's what I think the emergency part.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, having the Director of Emergency Management for the city-county as a club member who happens to also be the vice president. He's been there as vice president for a few years, so he predates his promotion. But he indicated that we should point out some areas that maybe are different. And emergency management works hand in hand with us to provide emergency communication on a moment's notice. We have a Yaesu Fusion VHF repeater and a D-Star UHF, as well as Icom HF and VHF transceivers permanently installed, as you saw earlier. And we recently upgraded everything to make sure that we have interoperability. So along with that, the amateur radio frequencies are programmed in our first response vehicles and in the public health emergency trailer that we use. So during past disasters, and it doesn't have to be a disaster, it could be just a plain heavy snowfall. So our members have been called on to help and man the emergency repeaters and communication nets when the 800 system has gone down, 800 megahertz public service system. And we've also had club members ride along with first responders during that time to provide the communication when as I said, the primary 800 system is out. In addition, most of our club members are CERT trained. That's the Community Emergency Response Team that originated out of California. And having them in that position gives us added benefits for the area. So,
well, to me, it sounds like you guys have really done your job. What do you think, Gordo?
Oh, I think so. And glad to hear about Andersons. And as long as you exercise them, they're like training. You got to regularly work the Andersons and they'll hold up fine. But you just leave them plugged in with nothing going on. Just when you need them, the connections get fuzzed up and you'll pass only a fraction of the current that you want them to. So exercise those troops, Don, and exercise those Andersons.
We'll do that.
We really appreciate you coming on, and we're going to have to go check to make sure everything's okay and the fires are staying away so Victor can keep us on the air. So come back again sometime and tell us about other happenings of the club. And hello to all of your members, and we'll see you again right here on Ham Nation, Don. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, great.
Job,
Thank
Don.
you for inviting us.
Okay.
You bet.
Super. We need more clubs like that, Gordo. I'll tell you.
Boy, we sure do. And his attention to not only servicing the hardwired connections, but also working with their members after each club meeting, so important, Bob.
They don't go to the coffee shop. They go get a soldering iron and make things happen. That's what should happen. Well, tell us more about what's going on out in your area. I do hope you're safe, you and Susie. But I know you got some other things to tell us about, so it's all.
Oh, yeah. Well, all is fine here in Southern California. Susie and I are well, and we're socially distanced. But, you know, ham radio is so great because we can get in this close and make contact. And Amateur Television Network, we get on there and you can see these folks and almost reach out and touch them. So it's good stuff. This past weekend, not just a couple days ago, but a week and a half ago, of course, were the Perseids. And wow, we saw a couple of good zingers go by and had several FT8 contacts on the higher bands. No, JT64 or JT144. There we go. On 144, we made a couple of great contacts. So digital was fun. Well, I thought we'd go from meteors to microwaves. So, Victor, if you don't mind, let's beam up to microwaves. And you know, the microwaves have been a lure for ham radio operators for years, but it wasn't until Advanced Receiver Research, ARR, came out with that unit. You see it at the very top of the picture. That was an FM transceiver, and it put out a whopping, I believe, 100 milliwatts, and we were able to get 100 and 120 miles perched in a dune buggy up on top of a cliff nearby down to San Diego, and wow, we thought that was like DX. Then Chip Angle, N6CA, came along and introduced us to transverters. And, well, now you're going to learn about them tonight. Many of you already know about them. First of all, anytime we're talking about 10 gigahertz and higher, we want to warn everybody, do not stand in front of anybody's horn or anyone's dish that has been energized. This is microwave. In fact, this is microwave at a frequency higher than your microwave oven. That's right. Even higher than marine radar for pleasure boaters. That's a 9 gigahertz marine radar, and it sweeps a zing, and then it'll come around again and zing. So your overall exposure to microwaves is not as high as when we start playing with microwave, and we're not zinging, we're constantly on in one direction. So just a word of caution, be cautious around microwaves. This is the San Bernardino Microwave Society. You can look them up on the internet. There are about 12 others throughout the country. I went to look them up and try to find them on many different sites, hoping I could find each and every one that we could put up here on the list. But just prowl around in your local area and find your microwave group. What we did up until the COVID was to once a year come together at a specific location. We would beam our signals a whopping 200 feet to a receiving setup and test how well our system was working as well as others. And this was one of these tests a couple of years ago. And the test really revolved around some very high sophisticated equipment at the receiver end, as well as they would also transmit back. And the test range at 220 feet really gave us a good look as to how our gear was working. And the heart of a 10 gigahertz and higher microwave system comes from Germany. Delta Bravo 6, November Tango, and that's Michael Kuhn, and sometimes they're known as Kuhn, Kuhne transverters, or simply NB6NT. These are modules that you can plumb yourself and without huge skills be able to come up and have at least 250 milliwatts out. Then you can start adding some of the amplifiers that are available and the preamps, and you can really get things going with microwaves. And so I went to the test site this year, and sure enough, there was nobody there. But, you know, nothing beats beacons. And the beacons on 10 gigahertz are at 10,368.3.32, 3.33, and the beacons are on the air 24 hours a day, maintained by avid microwave enthusiasts, including Chip Angle N6CA, that provides a lot of output, a lot of input devices for these beacons. And it's a great way for you to test your antenna and see how well it's doing. And if you can detect off of your antenna sun noise coming in when it's perfectly aimed at the sun, you've got a hot system. But even a not quite so hot system, a smaller dish like I'm rolling at the front of the bug, you'll find that it'll complete QSOs all over the place. Now that's Robert, one of the San Bernardino microwave system operators, relatively new to the SBMS ham radio, but a long-time microwave operator and builder. And he builds up his own systems, and they're hotter than a firecracker, as we found out this past weekend. This past weekend was the ARRL 10 gigahertz, that's 10,000 megahertz, and the higher microwave contest. And wow, were we in for some thrills that we did not anticipate. First of all, many of the microwavers have switched from the traditional lead-acid battery over to the BioNO power batteries because they rest at a higher voltage, even under a minor load. They rest about 13.8. Under load, they're down to 13 above. The traditional lead acid at that size would be only a third of the capacity. That's a 20 amp hour. Look at that. Yeah, 20 amp hour. That's a third of the weight. Nice and compact. All sorts of voltage protections, current protection circuits built in, so it's not going to short out, burn out, or overheat or whatever. And that keeps the microwavers on the air, certainly for one day. I was able to get 2 days out of that battery. Your rig that you're going to be dialing around, the IF rig, is going to be either the popular Yaesu FT817, but thank you, Ray. We needed it. The Icom 705, because that gives us a nice regulated 1 watt or less transverter output that's not going to burn up the transverter. Oh, yeah, there's a host of IF radios, Kenwood, Yaesu, Icom, Alinco, that you can dial down to 1 watt. But as soon as you key it, many times it jumps up to like 30 or 40 watts for maybe 10 milliseconds, just long enough to kill your power amplifier. But not the 705. That is designed. Same thing with the Elecraft K3. It is designed for transverter operation. So be real cautious as to what rig you're going to use to be operating your black box transverter. So thanks, Ray. He's an active and very knowledgeable operator when it comes to HF, VHF, and UHF. So he knew what we needed when it came to microwave. We also embrace via microwave old technology. Many folks have levels, and when I go maritime mobile, I always want to make sure I'm on the level, and there's nothing more than a string and a weight, and when the top string is on the top and the little weight down there on the bottom just nudges the bottom of the dish, I'm good. That's called a Cassegrain feed. It's not near as sensitive as some of the other ones we're about to see, but it's very forgiving, and it's one that will take a little bit of abuse and just keep right on honking. So I stick with it. It's not the most efficient, but it's quite portable for maritime or portable operation. And a good compass is great to have. You can get a digital compass, but you need to be able to see it out in the open. And most important, when you get out in the open, the wind is blowing, folks are coming up asking, hey, what are you doing? Are you beaming in on whales or porpoise or sharks? And so always have a helper with you, because we don't want to turn anybody off saying, can't talk to you, we're ham operators and we're busy. No, we got to talk to them because we need more hams. And you'd be surprised this past weekend how many hams came up going, hey, I heard about this. I want to learn more. You'll see that on the edge of the inside, no, make that the outside of my microwave dish, I have the frequencies to tune to for the different beacons, and then I have some of the frequencies that I know the operators will be on. Well, on Saturday, here in Southern California, we had terrific conditions called, you've heard it before, tropospheric ducting. And the tropospheric ducting was so great that you could actually see that warm air inversion capped by cool sea breeze below and the warm air above, and get a signal inside there, and it's like a microwave waveguide. And the tropospheric ducting occurs generally at about 800 feet to 1,000 feet, but last weekend we had a second one occur, so it was a double tropo, and it gave us some miraculous, good, solid communications out to 100 or 200 miles, running just a few 100 milliwatts. In my case, maybe a whopping 2 watts. Many of the microwavers will go roving, and those really dedicated, like Pat, 6RMJ, and others, went all the way up to near the Bay Area in the Central California area, only to discover they had huge thunderheads overhead. But for Saturday, they were able to get a signal out real well, and they roved over. And the deal on roving on microwave is you got to be separated 10 miles from your last contact with the same station to be able to get a new credit for a new location. So the big deal was between San Diego and San Francisco. Could we make it on microwave this particular weekend? We know the predictability of aircraft scatter. Aircraft are very nice to banging a signal off of them and having it come down 1.5 to 2 times further than normal. But the aircraft, it's a little elusive because if it's heading towards you, you've got to go a little higher, higher, higher on your tuning, or lower, lower, lower on your tuning, depending as to Doppler shift. So that's always a unique problem, but you know you're on an aircraft when you can't keep the other station tuned in because they're either too high or they're really too low if the aircraft is going away. And it only lasts for maybe a minute. This is the biggie on the thunderstorms. And Chip, N6CA, gives a very interesting report that we're going to listen to shortly about what the thunderstorms do. But thunderstorms, as you know, carry a charged particles, tons of charged particles. They carry lightning. And that lightning is going to be coming up in the Bay Area, and that lightning is going to form to these 20 and 30,000 and higher stratocumulus clouds. And at times, folks would aim their antennas at the peak of the lightning and the peak of the top of the clouds and would get a signal coming back in the opposite direction hundreds of miles away called rain scatter. Well, several tried it, but those that were successful used digital software-defined radios. They could see that there was a signal. Here's what the signal of the beacon 300 miles away sounded like. And this beacon was from Kevin, 87OI, that had aimed up there. And if you just listen, you could make out the steady carrier. As soon as the carrier dropped, the noise dropped, and the noise was like nothing. But listen to this. Wow. So they were making the contact via rain scatter over a lot further than they could normally make, but the signal was so garbled that the CW had no pure tone at all. It was almost like listening to Aurora. And it was an exciting thing for hams to be able to tune in and hear just a rush of noise, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, be able to hear CW. And, of course, it's always exciting to be on a mountaintop up in the Bay Area when they have these bolts coming down all over the place. So there is a good example, Pat, 6RMJ, of his setup where he's actually able to monitor and see signals that he couldn't hear, but as soon as they would go into CW, he would be able to hear the kind of noise, but without the tone. So that was quite an amazing contact. When we go further, you'll find that good digital signal processing certainly helps. Keep the DSP off, though, if trying to tune in a beacon, because if it hears the beacon tone, it'll think it's a heterodyne, and you won't hear anything. That's the transverter on the backside of that transceiver with a mic cord on it. And the transverters come from November Bravo 6, November Tango, also known as Kuhn, Kuhne, his last name, Michael Kuhn. And they're out of Germany. They're about $1,000, and you still have to do some plumbing. But anyone into working microwave can give you a hand. You're not using coax on microwave. You're usually using waveguide. This is flexible waveguide, and that's your microwave connection. And we always have, make sure that you've got everything in there just right. That microwave connection's missing one thing, and that's the little rubber ring that goes around it to keep moisture out, because a little bit of moisture inside there is going to kill your transmission and reception at 10,000 megahertz. Here you see the black flexible waveguide. That's what I use. No, that's not my rig. That baby puts out about 10 watts, and that's enough to easily make it from San Diego up to the Bay Area. But listen to Chip N6CA describe conditions about microwave between Sacramento and San Diego. That's about a 400-mile path.
North of Sacramento all the way to San Diego, which is kind of a first as far as I know from that area, the San Diego area, up into Sacramento. So that was kind of exciting seeing that path existed. Over.
And, you know, that's a neat thing about microwave. Many times you'll meet folks that are in the microwave business, but they're also ham operators, so they take their skills and give it out freely to ham radio operators like myself wanting to get started in microwave back in the 70s when Chip got me started with the gunplexers on FM. We do a lot of plumbing on microwave to find the exact spot for the feed horn. And there you can see that we can use good old copper piping with a transition from round to rectangular WR75. And this is interesting just to get the right focal point to get that signal in and out of your antenna. And of course, there is your antenna right there on that fitting, just that little brass insert right there. That's doing all the work, ready to feed it in and out. And we try and minimize any adapters. This is my adapter, and it's probably costing me a half a dB, but I needed to get to an N connector down to an SMA for what my rig needed, from what the transverter needed, and it worked out quite well. But again, you want to minimize any junctions that could interfere. So good microwave training also applies to those on 3 gigs and 5 gigs and 2 gigs on the Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network. This is a very important public service tool that we can bring in emergency comms. Don, I'm sure, was familiar with that, because they're doing the same thing. And after a while, you get the hang of swinging the dish, peaking it, and then doing elevation, and then looking out and physically saying, whoa, I'm going through all these bushes. Maybe if I move 10 feet, whoa, move 10 feet, and now the signals are booming in. So foliage at 10 gigahertz, even just a waving grass, if it's higher than an elephant's eye, you're going to find that it'll attenuate. So you need an absolute clear shot at 10. And there is the typical size and plumbing of the NB6NT, the Kuhn unit that puts out itself about 250 milliwatts. And again, they come from Germany. And you look up KUHNE or Google NB6 November Tango, and you'll see that they have a couple of different models, and then they leave it up to you to find those power amplifiers. And a good microwave person, member of the club, is going to be able to find some good ones. But good old Robert, he says, I'm going to do one myself. Now, this is not Robert's, but this is one from a fellow ham that just did a wonderful job of home brewing his own, all the way from the TR-IF switch, the double balance modulator, TR sequencer, very important so you don't burn out your very expensive field effect transistor receiver, driver amp, gain adjust. Wow. Good thing that out of Germany, they supply that all made up. So I encourage all of you that you're sort of, been hanging around FM and you've tried some of the digital modes. While we do digital up on the microwave frequencies, the fun part is just hearing the excitement of someone's voice and hearing their CW or their single sideband signal coming through. And if you're moving in a vehicle, and we have slotted arrays that are omnidirectional, you want to switch over to FM, because on sideband, Doppler shift is so severe at microwave frequencies that you're going to wear out your tuning dial. But on FM, you're going to get a signal loud and clear. And thank goodness for the new Icom 705. It's going to really make plumbing my Kuhn microwave system over to it very shortly. So that's a story on microwaves. For those that also worked the sideband contest on HF, plenty of activity there. But we were sky high looking for thunderheads that normally you'd think, oh my gosh, that's not good for microwaves. We love it. So now let's take a look and see what George and Icom America are doing.
Get out and be active with Icom's new IC705 and its optional multifunction backpack. The IC705 is your perfect QRP companion, as you have base station features and functionality at the tips of your fingers and a portable package covering HF 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in at 1 kilo, or just over 2 pounds. With RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. 5-watt battery operation with BP272 or 10 watts with a 13.8 volt DC supply. Modes include single sideband, CW, AM, FM, as well as full D-Star functions. A large 4.3-inch color touchscreen and live band scope with waterfall. Integrated GPS with antenna and GPS logger, micro SD card for data storage. It comes standard with the HM243 speaker microphone, and it supports QRP and QRP-P operations. The perfect accessory for the IC705 is the LC192 optional backpack with a special compartment for your IC705 and room for accessories for soda activations or just a day in the park. Visit IcomAmerica.com/amateur for more information about this and all the great Icom radios. Icom invites you to enter in the weekly drawing for some great swag prizes like t-shirts and hats at IcomAmerica.com/HamNation. While you're there, you'll learn how you might win in the monthly grand prize drawing for a new radio. And for August, that new radio is the Icom ID5100A. Innovative 2 meters, 70 centimeter mobile with a large intuitive touchscreen interface. It's a VHF, UHF, dual band, dual watch D-Star transceiver. simultaneous FM-FM, FM-DV, or DV-DV dual watch receive, built-in GPS, optional Bluetooth board, DV-FM repeater list function, SD memory card slot for voice and data storage. It does DV fast data mode, and there's a downloadable Android app available. So go to icomamerica.com/HamNation after this and each episode and register to win. This week on Smoke and Solder, we're going to go back into the archives into 2013 and take a look at an antenna that's simple to build that works multiple bands. You've seen us build dipole antennas on HamNation before. Well, this week I'm going to build a little variation on the standard dipole. This one is called an off-center fed dipole, and the reason is the antenna is not fed right in the center, it's off to the side. Why would you do this? By making it an off-center fed dipole, it'll be resonant on more than one band. Now, this is probably not as good as having a separate half-wave dipole for each band you want to operate on, but it is a simple antenna that you can build that will work multiple bands. So we're going to need a few things to start with. We're going to need either a 4-to-1 or a 6-to-1 balun. Here's the one that we built several weeks back from MFJ. It was a kit. You'll notice the wire coming out the side here for the feed is uninsulated. Well, I really don't like to put bare copper out in the elements like that, so I'm going to put a little heat shrink over these wires, and we'll seal it up good with liquid electric tape or something here after we've got it connected. Of course, we're going to need some wire since it is a dipole, and we need 2 pieces. The total length that we've got here is about 130 feet. We've cut one piece here to be 85 feet, 2.5 inches. We actually should need 83 2.5 inches, but we cut it a little bit longer so that we've got some room to play with to tune it. You can always shorten the cable. It's hard to make it longer. And for the shorter element, we've got 47 feet, 9.5 inches, and we'll actually probably use 46, 9.5. At least that's the calculated values. We're going to need a couple of insulators too, one for either end. So I've got a couple of little ceramic insulators here. I think these came from MFJ. The wire that I'm using here came from Lowe's. It's just regular old stranded wire, and this is 12 gauge. You could get by with something smaller, but you know, I like using this because I can stretch it a little bit tighter. We'll need to strip back the insulation on one end here so that we can connect it to our balun. We want to be careful not to nick through and cut the conductors in there. So I'm going to just kind of score it here, and then I'll take my wire strippers, twist it a little bit, and then pull it off. We've got 3 eye bolts here on the balun. The center one, of course, is going to be used to hang it, and the other 2 will be used as stress reliefs for our elements. So the way I'd like to do this, and there's all kinds of ways you can tie this, but this is the way I usually do it, and I haven't had a problem with it yet. I'm going to pull about that much. That's probably about 5 inches worth. Do one wrap around the outside and do the other one inside the loop, sort of like this. So as the wire gets tighter, it's actually will be tightening down on it, on the knot there itself. Now, I know I'm going to get emails about this because everybody's got their own way of doing this, and I'm certainly no expert on it, but as long as it stays up there, I think you're safe. So here's what I've ended up with. And now we'll solder these 2 together, and that'll have one element done. And I've done this one essentially the same way. I got a slightly different length there, but you know, that's probably not going to matter much at this frequency. Now I'll tin both of these conductors before we even try to solder them. And I'm going to put some flux on there. You know, I'm a big believer in using solder flux. And now we need to connect these 2. And I'm using such heavy gauge wire here, it's going to be hard for me to twist these around.
So I've got a box of these little crimp sleeves that I bought, at Lowe's a while back. I didn't rush out and get them for this project. So I've slid my crimp sleeve up on there. I'll just go ahead and crimp that down now. I just feel better if there's solder on it. So we'll flow a little solder up in there. All right, I feel pretty good about that one now. I'm going to use a little bit of denatured alcohol here to clean off some of the remaining flux. Now, this is not really the recommended way to do this, but in my case, it's what worked, so that's what I'll use. Now I want to insulate this as well to keep it from corroding, so I'll use a little bit of Scotch 88 electric tape here. And once I've got that done, I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to use some liquid electric tape here and coat that, and then this ought to be good for years to go. Now we've got all that dry and everything looks sealed up good. There's only one thing really left to do. That's to put the insulators on the end of the wires here. For now, since this is going to be tuned on site, I'm just going to put them on here and just wrap them around a little bit. Once I get on site with an antenna analyzer, I can tune this thing and then trim off the excess because these wires are just a little bit longer than necessary. So there you go, how to build an off-center fed dipole.
One more thing I want to tell you about is Amateur Logic's 15th anniversary contest. That's coming up in October. It'll be 15 years since we started AmateurLogic.tv. We've got a great prize package lined up here, though, that you could win thanks to Icom and a number of other sponsors. We've got the Icom IC705 transceiver, that new QRP all-band all-mode transceiver. This is just about to be released in the United States, so you'll have one of the first ones. Also, the LC192 utility backpack, very convenient for storing the radio, plus antennas, spare batteries, a sandwich, or whatever you want. For an antenna, we've got the MFJ2289 PKG Big Ears antenna package. It's the MFJ 2289 antenna with a 1918EX tripod and a 6204 carry bag. Also, in case you want to run off power or charge the battery, there's an MFJ 4115 portable 12-volt power supply. And, of course, for the microphone, what else would we use? A Heil BM17 headset, a great, lightweight, comfortable headset, perfect for QRP operations, and this one will be the BM17IC, designed especially for Icom rigs. Of course, a little RG8X coax completes the package with a way to connect the radio and the antenna together. I want you to go to amateurlogic.tv/contest and check out the details there and register to win. Why not? Somebody's going to get a great QRP prize package that'll be perfect for going to the park or your next backpacking trip. That's amateurlogic.tv/contest.
From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2233, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. In a year when ham expos were canceled, scaled down, or migrated to simple online platforms, this year's QSO Today virtual Ham Radio Expo broke new ground on August 8th and 9th.
The QSO Today Virtual Ham Radio Expo was an unprecedented gathering, an ARRL-sanctioned event with major sponsors, 45 exhibitor booths, 65 speakers, 26,000 amateurs registered to attend for free on a 48-hour accessible platform. With an exhibit hall, auditorium, and avatars representing convention goers and stall holders, the specially designed online environment replicated the in-person convention experience, minus the parking hassles and the food trucks. It was the concept of Eric Guth, 4Z1UG, host of the popular QSO Today weekly podcast, who, like the rest of us, was missing Dayton this year. Eric told Newsline, "Amateur radio is like a huge tent, and this one was the biggest in his life, which made it a learning experience." For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Neil Rapp, WB9 VPG.
If you've been waiting to take your license exams in the UK, you're going to have to wait a little longer.
Hams in the UK who had hoped to gain their foundation licence or upgrade to intermediate this month are going to need some patience. Demand has been so great that most available slots for the Radio Society of Great Britain's online exams are already booked until late September. The remote invigilation exams were previously only given to foundation candidates, but they were recently opened up to intermediate candidates as well. The requirement for a practical has been dropped for both levels of licence. To register for an exam, visit rsgb.org/exampay. The changes have resulted in a big growth in online training. Free coursework is available from a number of sources, including Essex Ham and the GM60X website. Links to both are available in the printed script of this week's report. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Jeremy Boot, G4NJH.
Whether you're a big gun or a little pistol, get ready for a contest later this year that's about to level the playing field.
It's being called the Fox Mike Hotel Portable Operations Challenge, and this contest is making its debut this year by posing one question. Can the Superstation contester best the little pistol portable operator? October may seem like a long way off, but it's not, and that means the question will be answered on October 3rd and 4th, the weekend of the challenge. It uses scoring methods to level the operating field for both portable and home-based stations. The scoring metric uses the distance per power value with multipliers for portable operations and transmission mode. Frank Howell, K4FMH, created the concept based on his own portable ops team's contest participation competing against bigger stations. The challenge's sponsors are the South African Amateur Radio League, the UKDX Foundation, the ARRL's National Contesting Journal, and the Hellenic Amateur Radio Association of Australia. For more details, visit foxmikehotel.com/challenge. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Paul Brown, WD9GCO.
And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, Jeremy Boot, G4NJH, Paul Brown, WD9GCO, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation. Now here's the solar update from Dr. Tamitha Skov, WX6SWW.
Solar cycle 25 is ramping up. We've got several solar flares and several solar storms, and one of them is Earth-directed. Those stories and more in the news this week. This space weather forecast is sponsored in part by Millersville University. Come get certified in broadcast space weather. Visit millersville.edu/SWEN. Space weather this week is definitely keeping us on our toes as solar cycle 25 ramps up. As we switch to our front side sun, you can see multiple bright regions in Earth view, including region 2770 that begins to rotate off of the sun's west limb. But before it goes, it fires one of the biggest flares we've seen of this solar cycle yet. It's a C-class flare, but bam, look at that blast wave. Oh my goodness, it's just gorgeous. We haven't seen that in quite some time. Then meanwhile, if you look down in the south, you've got multiple regions down there. They are also firing off solar flares and solar storms. We got a couple B-class flares and some solar storms being launched, including this one right here on the 16th. Pow! Do you see that right there? That big thing, that launched a long-duration B-class flare and a solar storm that is earthward directed, and I'll get to that more about that in just a second. Meanwhile, we also have a remnant coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone here in the next couple days. It will send us some fast solar wind on the heels of that earthward directed solar storm. So we might get a short period of extended storming with this one, which is good news. Now, as we switch to our far-sighted sun, this is stereo A, and it's looking at the sun pretty much from the side. Look at the southern hemisphere. Do you see those two bright regions? Bam! Do you see that one sends off that first eruption? It's pretty massive, but not Earth-directed. And then, bam! There's the other one. That was the one that was Earth-directed. That one's still on its way to Earth, and it's been just amazing because we've actually had a lot more activity down here in the southern hemisphere, and these regions should keep us very happy over the next week as we continue watching them cross across the Earth-facing sun. And then after that, we might get a little bit of a reprieve because it looks like the sun is a little bit more quiet after that, but still, it looks like it's going to be good news for aurora photographers. Switching to our coronagraph view, now this is the view from Earth, and we're basically looking at the sun as if it were in eclipse. You can see that solar storm being launched off to the east of Earth, but look at that. It definitely is a partial halo, and because it's so incredibly bright and dense, that does mean it's moving a bit faster than these weak storms that we have seen over the past couple years. And that is yet another indicator that solar cycle 25 is ramping up, and it sure looks like we could get clipped by this storm here in the next couple days. Switching to our solar storm prediction model, NLL, this is NOAA's version of the model. The top panel's density, the bottom panel's velocity, and you're looking down at the sun from the North Pole with Earth being off to the right. Now you can see that solar storm as it's launched. It looks like it's going to go a bit east of Earth, but as it continues moving out, you can definitely see we could easily get hit by the western flank of this solar storm, and by the size of it, you can also tell it looks like a pretty dense structure. Now, NOAA is expecting the impact to be late on the 19th, and if so, this is a reasonably fast storm. In fact, it could be the biggest storm we've seen of solar cycle 25 yet. But NOAA has not the only one. NASA has also done a run. Their impact time is about midday on the 20th, and if it does arrive later like that, then that means it's a little bit slower, so it could be a weak storm. So we kind of have to sit here and wonder, well, you know, I guess it all depends upon how the traffic is from the sun to the Earth, right? At any rate, it's still good news for your aurora photographers because we could get aurora clear down to mid-latitudes. So definitely keep your batteries charged. Switching to our solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are anticipating the hit from that Earth-directed solar storm. It could hit us as early as the 19th. So at high latitudes, NOAA is expecting active to even minor storm conditions with up to about a 50% chance of a major storm. Now, this will be followed by a pocket of fast solar winds, so you can see at high latitudes, we could stay at active conditions easily in through the weekend before things calm down. Now, mid-latitudes, NOAA is only expecting active conditions, but with up to about a 15% chance of minor storm conditions. So your aurora photographers, even at mid-latitudes, definitely stay on your toes because you could get some decent chances for aurora. Switching to our solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, despite the fact we've had all of this solar flare and solar storm activity, believe it or not, everything is in the green when it comes to big solar flares. We have no risk for radio blackouts right now because we're back to a spotless sun. Who would have figured that, right? But this should make GPS users on Earth's day side very happy. Your GPS reception should be very good. That is until that solar storm hits on the 19th and the 20th. But until then, things should look pretty nice. Now, also, we are managing to stay in the low 70s for solar flux, and that's thanks to all the bright regions in Earth view. So this means radio propagation on Earth's day side should also stay in the marginal range, and that should, have some decent propagation again until that solar storm hits on the 19th and 20th. So be prepared for some issues, especially on Earth's night side. Now, also because we are just beginning to come out of solar minimum, the cosmic ray flux is a bit higher than we'd like it to be. So you frequent flyers, and this does include aircrew who fly at over 800 hours annually and fly at high latitudes and high altitudes, you are in the moderate range for radiation dose, and this does include prenatal passengers. So please take this into consideration in your flight plans. So the space weather this week is definitely keeping our attention. We have an Earth-directed solar storm that could hit us right around the 19th or into the 20th, and this is good news for your aurora photographers because this storm could be the biggest storm we've had since the beginning of this solar cycle. It looks like it could be a fun one, so definitely keep your batteries charged. Even you photographers at mid-latitude should get a chance, so we're going to be crossing our fingers there. Now, also amateur radio operators and emergency responders, well, we may have a spotless sun right now, but hey, we're managing to stay in the low 70s for solar flux thanks to all the bright regions and, believe it or not, a lot of the little flares that go pop, 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 pop. So if you hear static on the bands over the rest of this week, don't worry, it's not your rig, it's just the sun waking up, so enjoy. But also know that once the 19th and 20th come around and you start getting some issues with propagation, that's probably due to that solar storm, especially on Earth's night side. And now for you GPS users, well, you know what? The solar flux is managing to stay pretty low, so your day side GPS reception should be pretty good. But once that solar storm hits, it could mess things up for you if you're anywhere near aurora on Earth's night side or near those dawn dust terminators. So to look out. I'm Tamitha Skov, the Space Weather Woman. Thank you for watching.
All right, there we have the lady, and it's called The Lady. She is something pretty special, very special, and she knows her weather. And we're happy to have her right here on Ham Nation every week. So you want to be sure to tune in and see what's going to happen. Gordo, I'm sure that you pay attention to what she's doing every week.
Absolutely. In fact, we're staying in touch with Eric, KL7AJ, up in Alaska, one of our Gordo book technical editors. And we're hoping to make some good contacts. And hopefully he's going to see a lot of auroras tonight and tomorrow night up in Alaska.
Oh, that's great. Oh, yeah. Aurora, when I was a monster on 6 meters back in the late 50s through the 60s. Oh man, it was there so many times, and wow. I miss all of that. But Aurora still works well, doesn't it? If you know how to do it.
Yep, it sure does. And, of course, Aurora with CW, that's the mode. So those that enjoy CW, as we do here, it's still going to be the fallback mode. When conditions get rough, CW is going to get through, Bob.
Yeah, is this what you use right here? Is that right?
Yeah, it looks like a J38. That's a goodie. Yep, I've got one right here. Well,
that's my original that I did the work on 6 meters back in the 50s. But, oh, well, I traded it in for a microphone. Hey, we have a bunch of questions. I love you guys sending us these questions. We need to do more of that every Wednesday. Got a good one for you, Gordo. And I find it, I love it because the guys and gals are listening. It wants to know if you think conditions are better on microwave, or are there just more operators, since you and a few have kind of put it in the headlines. What do you think?
I think it's more operators. The microwave experts from years in the past, the N6CAs and so on, when we went over from wideband gunplexers over to CW and single sideband, we have grown the ranks. The San Bernardino Microwave Society, working with the Amateur Television Network here in Southern California, Badger contesters, the multiple Texas microwave groups, the East Coast microwave groups. I wish I could list them all, but in every major metropolitan area, there's a group of microwavers, and we're bringing those that are not into board level putting together stuff to plumbing their own with these experts from the great units that come out of Germany that are sort of not sort of, they're all put together, other than they need the changeover relays and a few additions for preamps and power amps. It's exciting, and it's now down to the level that many new hams can really wrap their soldering iron around.
I agree with that. That's true. We had a couple of others here really talking about the power the power poles, and boy, there's really pros and cons for all those.
Oh yeah, well, believe me, I think they're good, but if folks don't regularly exercise their Anderson connectors, exercise meaning plug them in and unplug them, plug them in and unplug them, these little silver coated teeth, they begin to go fuzzy. And I've seen solar panels put out an amp that only put out 300 milliamps a year later, just because we didn't plug them in and unplug them and plug them in. So that's my frustration with Andersons, is you really got to work them to keep those sort of spring tension teeth from making a good contact. And I'm amazed that we don't see Anderson connectors with maybe gold-plated contacts, huh?
Yeah, I hear you. but at least we can turn a few people on to things they need to look at. That's number one. And I thank everybody for all of your comments about the 160-meter antenna. But Andy wins the prize. The best thing for 160, some phase dipoles, right? No, all you need is a good dipole, and if it's a coaxial dipole, it's more broadband. And I learned that from the years I spent down in the Ozarks, where I had a 56 foot long coaxial dipole. That sucker was wonderful because it covered so much, and you didn't need a tuner. But there's so many ways to do it. That's for sure. And so all of you are you're getting ready, I think, for the fall, so that's good. Here's a good one. Let's see, where did I find this one? This was good, Gordo. K5TRP trip. I'm asking them what did they do. He said he got his tech, his general, and his extra. Hey, I like that. That's what he did on his spare time. Wonderful.
Well, that's great. But remember, getting the tech, general, and extra, that's just like the license. The real operation for extra, general, and technician is getting on the air. So make it happen. Next big contest, see if you can work 160 meters through at least 1296 and walk away saying, I might not have won the contest, but I worked every single band and I made a QSO.
That's right. And don't be shy. Don't be shy. You won't be the biggest signal on the air, maybe, and maybe you will. It depends on those things up there that help us refract. So get on. Don't be shy. And that's what ham radio is all about. And one of the other things that came up was David, W6QR, asked him he built two, not one, but two QRP rigs and a 6-element 2-meter Yagi. And Gordo, what you and I need to do, he cleaned up his shack.
Oh my gosh. If you look at mine, I've got a long way to go. So we'll work on it. I told Susie the shack is next. Well, maybe next.
Oh, gosh, I'll tell you. Kevin is going to be on 7192 tonight. And Steve is on 20 meters, if it's still happening, 14268. I wanted to let people know that. And Jeff's on reflector 14C. 14C for Jeff, K8JTK, for you guys that are looking for that. And I also want to say we don't say enough about this. There might be a lot of people listening. You got to understand that, yeah, we are all hams talk, but there's a lot of podcast listeners. They aren't hams, and they come from Leo Laporte's other side of the business here at TWiT Network. TWiT Network started out as strictly a podcast for computers and all of that kind of thing. And back about, what has it been now, Gordo, 10 or 11 years, he thought it would be best for us to put something on his network about ham radio. So who did I call? I called Joe for one, but then I called Gordo. And we're still here, Gordo. Nobody's kicked us out yet.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks, Bob. And thanks, Joe, for the inaugural first issue.
And the thing is that there are a lot of SWLs and people that want to be hams. And so we need to tell them about some things, but they might just want to know more. You go to www.HamNation, that's all one word, HamNationDstar.net. And you can get in and listen to the D-Star, HamNationDstar.net. And there's just so much to do in amateur radio. My goodness, it's once you get into it, oh boy. So you wanna pay attention, because there's a lot of things you can do, and you'll see on your screen that Victor's brought up some things of where you can find some of the happenings. And always email us, Gordo, myself, George, we're all available to you. And most of us have our call at awrl.net. But there's a lot for you to learn and a lot to be fun to be happening. That's the whole deal. A lot of fun that you can do and have. Well, I think we can pretty much wrap it up. We made it. My goodness. And Victor, you're the prince. Man, oh man, keeping all this together with fires all around you. So thank you so much. And I thought it went pretty good. And we thank Matt and Don and all of the people in that wonderful Georgetown. Man, what a club. And I was appreciative of them coming to me. So you have a club, email me. Let's put you in the spotlight. Let's see what you got cooking, new or old. We all are in the same ballpark. We're ham radio ops, and we like to share things. So give me a buzz. Thanks very much for being here. And thanks so much to Victor to keep this together. So, Gordo, we'll see you next week right here. I bet you, if we don't work you on the air somewhere. So be good, be kind, and by golly, you stay safe. That's the main thing. Stay safe in all of this. Wear your mask. There's no reason you shouldn't. And we'll talk to you next week. This is Bob Heil, K9EID, and bye-bye for now. See you, Gordo. Bye, everybody.
See you, Bob.
I'm Jason Howell, host of Hands on Android, where each week I take a look at the Android operating system and really dive deep into what it can do for you and how it can improve your quality of life, whether it be tips and tricks on how to use it better, whether it can be little known secrets that open up a world of possibilities. So many topics to dive into, including your emails. Subscribe by going to twit.tv/HOA. We'll see you there.